What if I told you that what seemed like a simple spin of Lewis Hamilton was actually the symptom of a deep structural failure in the new Ferrari? A failure that could compromise the entire 2025 season of the most historical team of the F1? Spa-Francorchamps, a legendary circuit. History knows him to separate the greats of mortals. And it was there, in the middle of the unpredictable climate, the wavy asphalt and the unsustainable pressure of a sprint classification, where Ferrari and Lewis Hamilton found an uncomfortable reality. The SF25 is not ready to compete at the level they promised. On paper, Belgium's weekend should be a validation. Ferrari arrived with its most ambitious update of the season. A completely redesigned rear suspension, designed to solve one of the biggest head pain of the car, its low braking instability and traction. The team had worked for weeks, if not months, optimizing each component to return to the Scuderia the ability to fight in front. It was not only a technical improvement, it was a declaration of intentions. The message was clear: Ferrari wants and can return to the top. But then it happened. During the SQ1, Hamilton was completing his return launch when he reached the last sector of the circuit, specifically in the infamous chicane of the bus stop. The car went completely in his hands. A sudden blockade of the rear axle caused a spin that not only took it out of the classification, but left everyone wondering what had gone wrong. Pilot error? Track conditions? Nothing of the sort. It was the car. Hamilton's expression was discharged. There was no common frustration. There was bewilderment, perplexity. Because that type of spin is not usual in a pilot with his experience, much less at that point in the circuit. In subsequent statements, he made it clear. He had never lived something like that. And for someone who has driven champions, that weighs. That confession was the beginning of narrative collapse for Ferrari. What seemed to be an isolated accident began to open a crack where all the technical weaknesses of the SF25 were leaked. The Spa track does not forgive. It has a fluid rhythm, high-speed curves, strong braking areas, and transitions that mercilessly reveal any incoherence in the chassis or on tuning. And right in that environment, Ferrari showed its worst face. The final area of the layout requires an accurate response of the rear train, both in aerodynamic and mechanical control load. That's where the SF25 broke. What Ferrari presented as his final weapon ended up being his most incriminating test. It was not simply a bad result. It was the symbol that something structurally serious happened. Because the most successful pilot of this generation does not fail like this without reason. And what seemed like the starting point of a competitive escalation for Ferrari became a call of attention that questioned the entire concept of the car. The moment when Spa ceased to be a sports challenge and became an existential crisis for Maranello. To understand what really happened in Spa with the SF25, you have to go beyond the spin. It was not a simple brake block, but the simultaneous collapse of two vital systems of the car, the braking and transmission system. And the most serious of all is that both are connected by an electronic integration logic that, in the 2025 Ferrari, is far from being reliable. The first element under suspicion was the braking system. From the first races, Lewis Hamilton had been denouncing what he himself described as a lottery with the brakes. One day they worked, the next one. And we are not talking about a temperature or wear problem. What happened is that Ferrari adopted the Brembo systems after leaving the experience with carbon industry that Hamilton used in Mercedes. This change was not trivial. It directly affected the pilot's feeling in the braking, especially in the modulation of the pedal and the confidence when entering into a curve. What for the majority is a minor difference, for a pilot like Hamilton who builds his time due to a precise braking, becomes a structural weakness. But in Spa, weakness was transformed in critical default. The variability of the system caused an imbalance between the axes. When Hamilton stopped normally, the rear train reacted with a sudden block. It was not the product of excessive force, but of an incoherence in the system response. The rear of the car was blocked before the front axle could stabilize the car. Result: loss of total control in the entrance phase to the chicane. And there comes the second problem, even more worrying: the gearbox. In theory, gear reduction must be fluid and perfectly synchronized with electronic motor and differential brake management. But in SF25, engineers discovered a mechanical counterattack phenomenon during reductions. Anthony Davidson described it precisely when analyzing the repetition of the incident. That sound is not normal. It is a backlash in the gearbox. This implies that, when lowering a march, the system does not properly distribute the torque towards the rear wheels, creating a sudden interruption that causes the blockade. This failure in synchronization between gearbox, motor brake system and physical brakes makes the car an unpredictable trap. And what is worse, this type of failure cannot be corrected with a simple brake balance setting. It is a problem that is born in the way the car systems are integrated, which requires a complete review of the energy management software, the engine mapping and the logic of regenerative braking. The premise of the SF25 was clear: to look for the maximum possible aerodynamic performance through a low rolling height platform. That choice forced the team to work with an extremely sensitive floor, designed to operate asphalt millimeters. The advantage? On paper, if the car is maintained within that optimal range, it can generate exceptional aerodynamic load levels without depending on external elements such as large wings or high drag configurations. The problem? That range is so narrow that any variation is completely taken from the performance window. This type of architecture also penalizes the pilots. The car does not forgive mistakes, but it does not allow to easily adapt to the style of each corridor. Hamilton, accustomed to a progressive braking, to release the accelerator before the entrance point and the use of the motor brake as part of the dynamic equilibrium, has encountered a car that demands surgical inputs. Any deviation, however minimal, compromises the behavior of the entire rear train. Even Charles Leclerc, with more experience about Ferrari cars, has publicly admitted feeling insecure with the SF25 on multiple weekends. And this is where the largest failure of the Scuderia is revealed: the disconnection between conceptual ambition and technical capacity. Ferrari wanted to jump a step in the evolution of the car without having dominated the previous one. He wanted to reinvent himself without consolidating. And the most worrying thing is that, due to the radical of change, reverse this concept will not be an easy task. It is not enough to introduce aerodynamic updates or new suspensions. It is the entire chassis, the logic of mass distribution, the integration between electronics and mechanics that is compromised. The SF25 is a breeding promise. An ambitious engineering work that, today, is closer to being an experiment than a winning weapon. In a sport where incremental evolution is usually more effective than radical jumps, Ferrari opted for maximum risk. And, for the moment, it is paying a very high price. The repercussions of the incident in SPA are not limited to the result of a sprint classification. What happened that Friday was a silent but definitive turning point in the Ferrari season and in Lewis Hamilton's personal narrative within the Scuderia. Because beyond the spinning and elimination in SQ1, the real damage was psychological, strategic, and reputational. For Hamilton, Ferrari signing was not just a sports decision. It was a legacy bet. Change Mercedes, the structure that led it to 7 world titles, by a historically chaotic team like Ferrari, required more than motivation, required faith. Faith in which the project was real. Faith in which the car would be up to it. Faith in which your experience could tip the balance. But every return with the SF25 has been an awkward reminder that the car does not respond to its talent as it should. And in Spa, that disconnection reached its most raw point. The spinning was not just a visible error in camera. It was the public confirmation that, no matter how much Hamilton strives, there are problems that neither can he solve from cockpit. And that, for a pilot who built his career about the absolute control of his tools, is devastating. He said it after the race: "I had never felt that in a car." And for someone with more than 300 major awards in their history, that means that the problem is not him. It is the car. On the Ferrari side, the consequences are equally deep. The SF25 was built with Hamilton in mind. The team reorganized part of its technical structure to adapt to its demands. He invested in specific simulations, redesigned his telemetry interface, and even adjusted the track engineering dynamics to replicate what had worked in Mercedes. But if despite all that the car is still reliable, then the problem is not execution. It is of concept. And when the concept fails, what is at risk is no longer a championship. It is the credibility of an entire project. The internal pressure in Maranello soon intensified. Filtrations from Italy speak of emergency meetings, possible changes in the development structure, and a division between engineers. And the worst thing is that the calendar does not give truce. The modern Formula One does not expect anyone. Each lost race, every opportunity wasted by a structural failure, is one more blow to the final objective, the title. And if Ferrari fails to contain this technical crisis soon, it runs the risk of losing not only the 2025 season, but something more valuable: Hamilton's faith in the project. Because in this sport, trust between pilot and car is everything. And when that trust breaks, the results disappear, but so does motivation. And with her, any possibility of redemption. The Spa incident has left Ferrari and Lewis Hamilton at a crossroads as technical as emotional. It was not only a mechanical failure. It was an open cry of a car that, in its current state, is not prepared to compete at the level of the modern demands of Formula One. And when that car is in the hands of a 7-time world champion, the disappointment is not measured only in tenths, it is measured in legacy, in broken confidence, in opportunities that run career after a race. The big question is now, can Ferrari reverse this situation before it's too late? Can they redesign a concept that, by their very nature, has proven intrinsically fragile? Or are we witnessing one of the greatest wasted opportunities in recent years in the championship?